Who is Reza Pahlavi? Why are you seeing him everywhere? And is he going to reclaim the throne in Iran when the Ayatollah falls? Now, I stayed up till like 5 in the morning last night just grinding ChatGPT learning this information. So if I get anything wrong, my Iranian friends get me right in the comments. So this guy's dad, Mohammad Reza Shah, was the ruler of Iran until 1979. And even though he was incredibly Western, building malls and skyscrapers and selling oil to the Western world, building a relationship there, he crushed the native culture there in favor of moving towards secularism. I mean, he was brutal. He persecuted anyone who criticized him. He shot people in the street who protested against him. And he even banned the hijab in favor of moving towards secularism. Imagine that. So people in Iran at the time, religious or not, felt like they were being suffocated by this ruler and they were just done with it. And this paved the way for one of the Shah's biggest critics, Ayatollah Khomeini, whom the Shah had previously exiled to build a name for himself. And he was able to convince the people of Iran, no matter where they sat on the political spectrum, that he could bring an end to this rapid shift towards Westernism. And that a revolution, a violent uprising would bring an end to this attack on their culture. You know, to be honest, if you were one of these people at the time, no matter how religious you were, it did kind of make sense. I mean, you watch your country change overnight because some guy wanted to sell oil to the United States. I'm not justifying it, but imagine what it was like for the people of that time who watched their country completely change in a way that they didn't want to. And they were under a king who was so brutal that if you criticized him, you could be killed on the street. It was rough. So they lead a revolution and throw the Shah out of Iran. He dies from cancer a year later, and Reza Shah Pahlavi, the guy who's all over the news right now, bounces around to a whole bunch of different countries and ends up in America, where he's waited to return to his throne. And where the people of Iran got screwed so harshly is that even though they threw out a dictator who was certainly harsh, what they got in return was much, much worse. The Ayatollah came in and continued to suppress his political opponents, doing the same nonsense that was done before, but now he established a theocracy, a political system in which religion and the moralities of his religion guides the society. And it's crazy because the people before in Iran had an opportunity to accept change. It wasn't like they were super religious and they went for it. But here, the Ayatollah Khomeini, he established the Islamic Republic and went running in the other direction. Women lost rights, they couldn't go to work, they couldn't have jobs, they couldn't sing, everything like that. So many people were executed, especially anyone who had previously publicly taken any sort of intellectual stance against the Islamic Republic of Iran. Not really the government itself, but more of the ideals that they held to be true and that they wanted to pass down to the people. And thus began 46 years of a crazy line of individuals who have done nothing but tried to destroy these Western values that had previously taken over their country. And that's where things get so complicated, because even though the Shah had previously embraced Western values and was a friend of the United States, he ruled with an iron fist, and the people didn't really appreciate that. I mean, obviously, but what they got in return was a guy who did the same thing and dragged them in the other direction. And I hate to say it, but one is clearly better for the world than the other. So where does that leave Reza, the guy who's been incredibly vocal since all of this has gone down? He was only 18 when he got exiled from Iran, and now he's built a life in America. You know, he has family here. He spent all of his time here. He's done everything in his power to gain support for Iran from afar, but let's be honest, it's not exactly like he could just show back up there and pretend like everything's the same as it was before. And it would be very remiss of him to show up and pretend like nothing has happened. It's not like his father was incredibly loved and he would be coming into continue on the work that had been done before. I mean, he was thrown out. There was a revolution. All of this nuance is incredibly interesting, and it gets even more interesting when you consider that Reza Pahlavi has spent his time in America being what many would consider to be an American liberal, even when I know most Persians and Iranians that I know are the furthest thing from that I can imagine. I mean, if you look at the work that he's done, aside from advocating for the Iranian people, he spends most of his time focusing on human rights and the environment. So instead of saying that he's going to come back and build a version of Iran that he had always wanted to build, he seems to have taken a different path. I don't know, man. If I were thrown out violently, I really believe that I would love to go and reclaim and be the one who's responsible for building the country that not only my father wasn't able to build, but especially his successor was not able to build. But his allegiance is towards democracy. He says, you know what, I want to go back, but only to help them in a transitional period where I can rule for a short period of time while I help them get a system set up for themselves, where the people are able to decide for themselves what they want for the country of Iran. It's a very noble thing, honestly. And he said, listen, if they're begging for me to come back as a monarch, I'm down for that. But personally, I don't really think that's going to happen. I think he's going to help them go through some sort of transitional period. And from there, they can establish some sort of democracy where there are many, many people inside of Iran that are clawing for the opportunity to lead. There's no doubt of it. So it's a super fascinating thing. I mean, you got a guy who whose father really just rapidly went towards westernizing, and the people didn't like it, and instead they got the most cleric Islamic rule you could ever imagine. And the guy who basically got his spot based on this rejection of Western ideals used that in his speeches. Death to America, death to Israel, death to Western ideology. You put it in historical context, it makes sense how this series of events happened. But don't forget that this is still horrible, and that any reason why these crazy ideologies come up, it doesn't make them any less crazy. This is bad for the world, and it's still a victory for the world in and of itself that he is going to be forced out in all likelihood.